Hello, fellow music nerds. Welcome back to Music Makers and Soul Shakers. I'm your host, Steve Dawson, coming to you from the Hen House Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a guitarist, songwriter, and producer originally from Vancouver, Canada. I love all aspects of making records, so I thought I'd make a podcast and bring in a slew of folks who've also made records in one way or another and yak about it with them. Each month I'll be bringing you an in-depth conversation with a new guest. It may be a musician, a songwriter, a producer, or an engineer, but each of these people will have a fascinating story to tell about their lives and their involvement in the process of being a music maker and or a soul shaker. Thanks for joining me, and feel free to reach out to me through the podcast website at www.stevedawson.ca. And now, here's another episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers. Howdy folks, welcome back. This is part 2 of my conversation with David Lindley. If you've not heard part 1 yet, make sure you go back and check it out. It's sitting right there from 1 week ago, part 1 of my conversation with David Lindley. Listen to that first and then hop in right here. This is part 2, picking up right where we left off last week. Enjoy the second half of my conversation with David Lindley right now. Tell me a bit about your guitar tone of that particular era, like what kind of lap steels you're using and amps, and if there's any effects involved and stuff.
Well, the amps, for the most part, were Dumble.
Okay.
I used an overdrive special for the lap steel.
Okay.
And there was a National lap steel, and then I used Rickenbacker lap steels, and then I got turned on to Supro,
yeah,
which was a subsidiary of National,
right.
Valco, and I used the Supros with the legs on them. You could stand up and play, and then for guitar I would use a Dan Electro curly horn guitar, 2 pickup guitar,
yeah,
the kind that came in the case that had the amp in it.
Oh yeah, I've got one of those actually. Those are great.
Oh yeah, those are really, really good.
And were you using did you use the case amp on the record?
No,
okay.
I didn't use the case amp.
Those are pretty gnarly.
Yeah, they're pretty gnarly. I used mostly black Fender Bassman.
Okay.
Pre-CBS, I use a black Fender Bassman head, and I'd plug it into an AC30 Vox AC30 bottom that had these 2 special speakers in there that were really good. I used those or a Dumble bottom, which had 2 Altecs.
Was Howard Dumble just a guy that you knew building crazy amps at that point? Like, obviously he wasn't the mega crazy elusive superstar amp guy now where his amps cost $100,000. Like, he was probably just a guy at that point, right?
Yeah, he was just a guy. Yeah, the amp guy in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
And then he moved down to Sun Valley, and the prices went up. You see, they were really good.
Was he like experimenting with amps on you at that point? Like, was he just getting into building?
Well, he was just starting to build stuff, and he would listen to people play and how they would play, and then he would make them an amp,
Right.
And it worked out really well because he was a guitar player, so he'd have you come over.
Yeah.
You'd come over, you bring your guitar, and he'd listen to how you played and check out the pickups on the guitar, see how they worked, and say, okay, well, let's see, we'll put this kind of preamp in there and see how that works. And he said, well, okay, I'll build you one. So I remember going in there with a black face Bassman, and I said, and I had another device, and I said, I want to put this device in this amp.
Yeah.
Okay. At the time I was using the blackface Bassman with a FET circuit in front of it.
Okay.
And I was experimenting with preamps that would overdrive the preamp in a black Bassman.
Okay.
So I tried all different kinds of things, Wollensack tape recorders and
Cool.
Tandberg tape recorders, and I checked them out, and I put them into this. I said, "Oh, this is good. This sounds really good."
Yeah.
And then he said, "Yeah, that's a good preamp." And he put all this stuff together, and the Overdrive Special came out of that.
So you're kind of responsible for the Overdrive Special.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, people in those days were experimenting with all kinds of preamps,
yeah,
and all kinds of, things from projectors and
Bell and Howells.
Bell and Howell tape recorders and all those different things, and then you put them in front of something that was pretty stable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered a Variac.
Oh.
And a Variac, you take those things and you turn them up until it was 121, coming out of the wall, and you go, okay, that's good. Okay, and the tubes are glowing a certain color orange. You want the tubes to glow orange, and then you want to have just a touch of blue in there. So that sounds good. Because a blackface bassman was susceptible to the power coming out of the wall.
Oh.
The sound that would come out of that. And that's one of the reasons I got the Overdrive Special, was to kind of counteract that effect.
Oh.
And I got Variacs, and I got... changing from, I was obsessed with Vox AC30 amps, and they didn't run on 60 cycles; they ran on 50 cycles.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and so I said, what I want is a cycle generator. I want to be able to take the power out of the wall and convert it back down to where it's supposed to be, down there at 220.
Yeah.
And 50 cycles, and he says, "Oh, that's $20,000. No, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. Lindley is not going to get a cycle generator." So I settled. I said, "Blackface bassman, okay." So I put a Variac in there, and I made sure that it would stay at the same power out of the wall.
Yeah.
So, and I'd adjust it, and it turns out that Eddie Van Halen was doing the same thing, and Billy Gibbons was doing the same thing, and we figured out that we needed a little more input.
Yeah.
To amplifiers and stuff like that, and Dumble at the time was doing experimentation with different amps.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Oh, this is good. This sounds really good. This is what I want." And I take it in there, and he put it together, and and it turned out to be this monster.
Amazing. Another tone, I guess, going back a year or two into the Jackson Browne thing, but like one of your most famous solos really is the Running on Empty thing, which was interesting too, because it's kind of it's like a live record, but it was all new material. So it's a real cool concept record. What about at that time? Like what would you have been using for the lap steel sound on those records? Same kind of thing, or?
Well, that was a Rickenbacker.
Okay.
And that was one of those Bakelite bowling ball plastic guitars, and
sure.
And I took off a couple of the covers. Mm-hmm. On the little resonation kind of chambers on there. I took a couple of those off, and it had this sound that was wonderful. And I said, okay, this is good. And then I tuned it up to A.
So it's real tight.
Yeah, really super tight. So I tuned, and Rickenbacker is a short scale.
Yep.
So you can kind of do that. You can if you use the right strings, and they'll last maybe 3 days. And the first string, at least, mm-hmm. You would, I had a whole lot of different Rickenbackers and National and Supro and different guitars. I had a Gibson that had a brass bridge, and I would use these different guitars, and I had like 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah. Up
there at one point, and I would use. They were all different versions of the same tuning.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
always used the same tuning, which was like a first position E chord
Yep. Yep.
on a guitar. Yeah, I used that tuning, except I would tune it up to F, G, and then all the way up to A.
Whoa. Oh, seriously? So it's open A tuning, but like an open D style open tuning, just tuned way the hell up.
Yeah, it's the open D tuning. It
Yeah.
was starting at the bottom was D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. The first string was D.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the acoustic tuning that you use. Okay, and then on electric, it was that same relationship. So it was F, and then I have one at E, one at F, one at G, and then one at A.
Oh, that is high.
Yeah, that's really high. And you couldn't do it with a national because the scale was too long. So
Yeah.
you do with a Rickenbacker, you have a short scale
Okay.
and tune that sucker up, and it would just about ready to explode, and that's what you're hearing on there.
Okay, cool. And amps and stuff like that, were you using the Dumbles on those tours?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just plug into a foot volume control and the foot volume control into the Dumble.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would use something in front of the foot volume control. I would use a Purple Peaker, one of Dan Armstrong's things, or I would use a...
What's the purple one? Was that a compressor of some sort?
Purple Peaker was nobody really knows what it was. I had 9 of them. I got one left, and it just does something to the sound.
Oh, okay.
It's basically a Stratocaster.
Okay.
It's the overtones that a Stratocaster amplifies.
Okay.
So you put that in there.
Yeah.
You put that in there and into the circuit, and that makes a hell of a sound. I think that's what I was using on Running on Empty was the Purple Peaker.
Oh, okay. Wow, I got to check that out. So it's like a mystery effect. You don't even know what it does.
Yeah, they were little boxes that Dan Armstrong used to make.
Yeah, I remember.
And
yeah.
I used to hang out with him. There was a orange squeezer.
Yeah.
He'd make them so you plug them into the guitar, and then you plug your guitar cord in there, and you turn it on, and all hell breaks loose. They were just the best, you know. And then a lot of different effects. I used a phase shifter, MXR phase shifter, and then a red box. I'd use one of those overdrive kind of compressor limiters, the red box MXR.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Lowell used. He said, I used to take an LA2A out on the road, and they proved to be just not roadable. So
he actually had one in his live rig, an LA2A?
Yeah.
Wow.
He had an LA2A. He said, that sounds good. You know, so put it in the amp, put it in the powertrain, and he would use that, and he said, this thing just won't hold up. It's not roadable. Here's something that's better. And he showed me this little red box, and I said, what is that? Oh, it's an MXR compressor limiter. And you put that in there, and you just adjust it around until you get the sound you want, and there you go.
Yeah. So simple.
Yeah, solo. And when you go to take a solo, you just stomp on that thing.
Okay.
And there you go.
Almost like using it just like as a boost pedal more than anything, but also a compressor.
Yeah, it was a boost pedal, and then you would be able to compress it and limit it down and a line level limiter. You know, like just like an LA2A, essentially what it is, but reliable.
Right. Roadworthy.
Yeah, roadworthy. And Lowell really did some experimentation before he ended up with that. So
I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about your sessions have been a big part of your career as well, but it seems to me like maybe it's not your favorite thing to do because you've always tended to go out on the road more than be a session guy. Like I'm pretty sure if you wanted to, you could have just stayed in LA and been like the session kingpin of the 80s and 90s and 2000s, right?
Yeah, I decided to go on the road. I like that interplay between the audience and musician. I thought that was really a good thing. So I remember I ran into a guy named David Cohen.
Uh-huh.
David was a fingerpick guitar guy at the Ash Grove. I mean, he would teach classes and he'd do all kinds of stuff. And he was a great guitar player. And I remember talking to him, and he said, you know, I decided to stay in town and be a session musician. That's what I wanted to do. And he would have 3 sessions a day, and he would maybe 5 days a week or maybe 6 days a week. And he did like Lee Sklar.
Yeah.
And he would go do these sessions. And he says, I want to go out on the road like you're doing. And can you take all my sessions? I said,
nice guy.
I said, no. Yeah. And he said, oh, well, you know, so he really wanted to, but you have to kind of balance that stuff off, you know. I recorded with a lot of different artists and stuff. And I still playing live is the thing. That's really it, you know. Yeah. And I decided to just keep that going, and you know, occasionally do sessions when I'm home. And
in those days, like in the 80s and 90s, I would imagine you could have been doing sessions all the time, and you chose not to. What the ones that you did do, you know, like there's so many great ones, but you did a lot of records with Linda Ronstadt and that trio record with Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton is incredible too. That for me is, from what I can hear, really. Now I might have missed something on one of the El Rayo records, but that's the first time I ever hear you playing the Weisenborn on a record. Is that true?
There was one El Rayo X album that had it was El Rayo Live. Okay. It was a pink album. I don't know if I think it was released in Japan and in Europe. It was a pink brick wall album cover on there, and it had you know, all the information was in Sharpie, and on that was the first Weisenborn thing.
So was Weisenborn something that you just discovered later, or were you always playing it and you just never recorded it?
That was the first thing. That was, I would say, one of the first instruments, bluegrass instrument. It had bass, unlike a dobro.
Right.
So in the I was messing around with it a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
When I worked at Berry and Grassmack, I saw Weisenborn against the wall, and I said, "What the hell is that?" So I picked the thing up. It was this guy named Ron Middlebrook, who is a really old friend of mine. He played Rickenbacker electric guitar, and he was a guitar teacher at Berry and Grassmack, and it was one of his. And I checked that thing out. And I said, "Holy shit, this thing sounds really good." I checked it out, and I went, "Oh, okay." You know, a little light went off in my head. I said, "Yeah, use this. This is a great thing." So I kind of cataloged it, and then later on, I went out and bought one.
Okay.
And that's the acoustic version of the lap steel.
When I hear that record, the trio record with Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris, there's a solo that you do on there that for me, like when I was learning Weisenborn and like lap steel and stuff, I was so drawn to that solo. I think it's on To Know Him Is to Love Him. I don't know if you remember that song, doing that song or not.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So to me, it sounds like you're plugged in directly. Like I don't hear any acoustic sound at all. Were you using it that way in the studio? And am I right hearing it that way?
Yeah, it was a Sunrise pickup.
Yeah.
And it was George Massenberg recording that, and we plugged it in. We did. We had a microphone on it, and we plugged it in direct. And then we had. I think there was an amp in a room. I think.
Oh, okay.
There was all 3 of them. So
cool.
he made a mixture of all 3, and he said, "This is the only pickup that I've ever tried out that will hit 26,000 cycles. He says, my parametric equalizer actually works on this instrument, so we'll make use of that. So, and it really did. Those old Sunrise pickups, they had 26K in there, all the way up. Yeah, up into Dogland.
Yeah, that's up there, man. 26. I don't know if, like, can we even hear 26? I guess
Yes,
George Massenburg can.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Massenburg, at least he could. You know, I mean, I was on my way downhill about that point. You know.
Okay. And so, like, on a session like that, would you, like, that was big time in those days? Like, that was as big as it gets for, like, pop stardom.
That's as big as it gets. Yeah.
Were you doing those solos and things as overdubs on tracks that were already there?
No, sometimes I would do it at the time. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
And then Linda would say, "Oh, you can do better than that." And,
really?
And yeah, oh yeah. And then Dolly would chime and say, "Oh yeah, you can."
What was the dynamic like with those three? Because, I mean, if they were actually in the same room recording at the same time, that must have been a total trip, man. Those are like three of the greatest singers ever.
Oh yeah, it was fabulous. They figured out how to do it, and they would practice. It was constant doing stuff. You know, we were in there, and they would work on tunes in another room, you know, while we were learning the song, and getting ready to record, and then we would record the track with, and one of them would come out and sing the song, so we would know what it was like, and maybe keep that take, and then add the two harmonies onto that, and that was one method. And there was, you know, a dozen methods of recording these songs because they're all pros. I mean, they've been recording stuff and doing, you know, making albums and stuff for years. Dolly Parton, you know, for one. You know, Linda Ronstadt, you know, she came out of the womb singing, and Emmylou Harris, and
forget it.
Yeah, it was fabulous, and it is one of those times where you make a mental note of this because this only happens once.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I did that. You know, I got to hang out with all these great musicians. And
a couple others that come to mind, like, so as we mentioned, like, you kind of just left that life behind a little bit and turned a bunch of stuff down, but you did play on records with Bob Dylan, and I know you played on, like, a Curtis Mayfield record. Do you have a favorite session or two that you could tell me that really sticks in your mind as being, like, super inspiring and just a great experience?
There was one, People Get Ready, There's a Train Coming, with Curtis Mayfield. That was on the Sundays program. It was David Sanborn's program. Oh yeah. And he had played sax with James Taylor, so I got to know him really well. And he got a TV program. He says, "Come on TV and play some songs." And Curtis Mayfield is going to be on there too. So I said, "Oh boy,
yeah,
oh boy, I'm there." So I flew to New York and did that. It was a 14-hour session. And People Get Ready, There's a Train to Come. And Curtis Mayfield says, "You want to play on this?" I said, "Oh, you bet. I'll do that." And he said, that's yes. Let me hear it. Let me hear what you got on lap steel. You know, up on legs, lap steel up on legs. And he says, "That's the same tuning I use."
No way.
Yeah. It was an F tuning. And he said, "This song is in F."
Crazy.
So I said, "Oh, that's really good. I can play all my stuff." And he said, "Oh," I said, "Let me hear what that sounds like." And he said, "This is good. This is a good thing." So we did that song. And he turns around to me. Curtis Mayfield turns around to me in the middle of the song, and he says, "Play the solo, David." I said, "What? Oh, wait. No, that was it." I said, and there was this big neon sign that came. We did it with an audience there. There was an audience sitting in bleachers up there.
Okay.
And this sign came on in between me and the audience that was in the bleachers. It was a neon sign that said, "Don't screw up."
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And it was, and it was good. It was a good solo too. It was, he liked it. That was the main thing. I mean, throughout all this time,
Terrifying.
it was terrifying. But it was one of those things. I said, if I'm going to go down, 11 million people going to watch this thing.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go down, I'm going down in flames.
Yeah, man. Go down in style.
That's it. So I said, okay, here we go. So I played the solo, and it turned out really good. He loved it. He thought it was good.
Amazing.
And then and all that. And then I figured out it was an old thing. I'd been doing that all along. All of the stuff, that mindset, going in there, playing the solo. People will remember this sound, so you better make it good.
Yeah.
So I will, but that moment, that was a big thing, because all the stuff, afterwards came in there. During the solo, I didn't see or hear or,
You're just in the zone.
No, I was in the zone, and I said, okay, now I know what this place is. Right. Now I know what the zone is, and you don't think.
Whatever you do, don't think.
Yeah, don't think, and it'll come out really good.
Amazing.
Okay, yeah. I'll just do that. I'll just do that for the rest of my life, and everything will be fine.
Don't think. From Dave.
Don't think. Yeah, it's a big.
That is a big thing.
Yeah, it is.
With music, man.
But you have to do all the preparations first.
Right.
Yeah, you have to make sure everything works. You have to get the best sound you can get, and then you take that right on out.
Yeah.
And do it for the people, and it works out really good. And also for Curtis Mayfield or Jackson Brennan or Dolly Parton.
Of course. Yeah.
And they like that.
Can you tell me a bit about your relationship with Ry Cooder? Like, I'm obviously a big Ry Cooder fan as well, but you've had a pretty long-standing thing with him where, you guys have made live records together. You've been on albums of his and the soundtracks. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you guys connected and like found a way to work together. Cause a lot of some of it's similar territory. You don't do the same thing as he does, but it's in the same ballpark. So maybe talk a little bit about that and your experiences, particularly with the soundtrack stuff. I'd love to hear about the soundtrack sessions.
I'd known Ry for a long time, from the banjo fiddle contest, and then from the Ash Grove, and he was the bottleneck guy and the fingerpick guitar guy, and and then he was also the first electric Ry Cooder album with that Stratocaster with the
Coodercaster. Yeah,
the Coodercaster, and I said, this is really good. This is fantastic. And played in his band and did all this stuff, and we played the No Nukes concert and did all that stuff. At that point, I had done a couple of movie sessions for him in Walter Hill.
Right. Yeah.
The Long Riders and
I love that one.
And all that stuff. We did that, just by the seat of our pants.
Can you tell me like what that means? Like, did you have the movie playing in front of you and you were
and we played to
riffing off of that?
We the movie would be playing and we played to it.
Improvising, or were you playing pieces that
no,
he'd
written? Always improvising, and then if he hit on something that was really good, he says, Ry would say, "Oh, do that."
Okay.
Do that a bunch. Okay. I said, okay.
So he went into the scoring of those movies basically with a blank slate.
No, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh, okay.
He said, he would say, we got this one one thing for Geronimo. Say, let's take Geronimo. I said, we have this one thing, and I started to write a bunch of different things around this,
Uh-huh.
based on Methodist hymnal.
Oh.
So you go in there and you play. We went into the sound stage, and they had all these regular musicians.
Yeah.
Sid Page, and he had a string section and all this stuff, and they would play like shape note singing, but with instruments. And they would do the brass. They did this stuff. It was old sounding.
Uh-huh.
And then we do the string band things.
Yeah.
And they sounded old too. You know, he said, "Don't play bluegrass."
Right.
I remember that. I said, "Don't." He said, "Don't play bluegrass."
Okay.
So when I was playing mandolin, so
Tricky.
I played. Yeah, it's different. It's a kind of different approach. And then with the long riders, that was one of those things where you sit and you watch the track and you'd play.
Okay.
Just go from this number right here. There would be numbers on the screen up above. Go from this number to 2001. You know, at the end of the thing. So just play something good and interesting in there.
Okay.
And it'll work.
What about instrument selection? Like, were you just picking randomly, or did he say, like, why don't you play the bouzouki here or something?
He knew exactly what he wanted. You know, he kind of check things out, and then if it was something else, I said, well, that'll work good, but bouzouki has a little bit, the strings aren't as tight as a mandolin, so bouzouki will work really well here. Check this out. So I would play it, and he said, oh yeah, that's good. The octaves, those octave strings on there, that's what we want. So, and I said, yeah. So we would use that instead of mandolin.
Cool.
And then then we got into all those things, and then we got into the Turkish classical instruments, the yali tambur and the tambur and saz and all of those things, and he said, we make use of these. Mm-hmm. This is a good thing. I was also doing soundtracks with James Horner at the same time.
Which ones were you doing with him?
Willow.
Oh, really?
There was that, and there was a couple other things that I would do with James. He was the soundtrack guy.
Right. Yeah, that's big time.
So he called me up and he said, "Come on over." And it'd be a session where we look at the screen and play.
Yeah.
He says this, and I also I remember going to England doing that. The same thing. Look at the screen and play with this Irish traditional band.
Yeah.
And
would James Horner say play this, like give you a line to play, or was he just like be Dave? And
no, he said go up the neck. I said, oh. Okay, well, it may not be in tune. Yes, yeah, that's what I want. Okay, I want it not in tune. Okay.
Wow,
that's good. And he was tremendous. That whole soundtrack, thing just kind of took off. And with Rye, it was kind of the same approach. It was a different thing in those days, and I think James heard that I had been doing stuff with Rye, and he wanted that kind of thing. And I don't know. I never know.
Do you think Rye wanted you around because you were like in the same ballpark as him, and it maybe made him feel more comfortable?
Yeah. There could have been that too, really, because we came from the Ash Grove, and we would go every night and see the same people, and McCabe's guitar shop and all that stuff, and we were kind of reading from the same hymnal,
Right. Yeah, I get it. What about Jack Nietzsche? Did you work with him on soundtracks?
Yeah, I worked with him on a couple of them. And
what was that like?
That was wonderful. He would he'd use the same approach, and then it would work out, sometimes it wouldn't work out, and he would end up doing it on piano,
Okay.
And he was great. It was wonderful working with Jack. He's the same kind of thing. He was one of those improvisational musicians.
Yeah.
Who could get all kinds of things out of there, and he would do, playing live to the screen, go from this number to this number. Okay. In fact, he was one of the people who showed me how to do that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and he was, he knew how to do it the regular way, conducting an orchestra, and
yeah, because he was totally fluent in orchestras, and that was his vibe.
Oh
right?
yeah, scoring and doing and all that stuff. I mean, if you look at a score, for this or for that, and he'd give me a sheet of paper that said, it just had a clef on it.
Yeah.
It was a piece of music paper that just had a clef on it, and a key, and the key was D.
Yeah.
So and it said Weisenborn, and I went, oh, okay,
cool. Blank page, right on.
Yeah, that's my kind of shit. I can do that.
Did you ever show up to a session and have somebody stick a chart in front of you with notes that they wanted you to play?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
How'd you deal with that?
That was Mike Post. Mike Post is an old friend, and he did the Hill Street Blues.
Sure, yeah.
And all kinds of television scores and stuff. And he and I go way, way, way back.
Really?
And he taught himself how to do all that stuff.
Amazing.
And he got an orchestrator and started working with him, Pete Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And he would, I go into, every once in a while I go, play the fiddle on something and play it all scratchy and weird. And he says, I remember this time, he said, he stopped the orchestra and he'd say, Mr. Lindley, don't you like what we wrote for you? I said, I don't know what this stuff is. He started laughing. He had to stop, a little bit. So and Mike, it was really wonderful working with Mike. I did some soundtracks and stuff with him, and it was for TV music, and and it was very difficult to go from one world to another.
Right, totally different approach from what you were used to, I guess.
It's a totally different approach, and it's like it's just as good, if not better.
Right.
When you write the stuff out and you want it to be a certain thing, and he was familiar with what I played, and he would write it, and it wasn't alien. It wasn't like impossible to play. Yeah. But it was. And he knew what to do. And there were a lot of times where I make it all the way through, and and it worked fine. Uh-huh. So it was just that one time I remember, the guy coming around.
You don't like what we wrote for you.
Yeah, you got a guy come around. He's got an armload of these sheets. Yeah. And they have all these golf clubs on them, and he sticks one in front of you. And I said, what the fuck is that? I don't do that. That's not part of my job description. So I said, oh, let me try. I'll try it. So I would kind of do stuff, and I'd do it different.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wouldn't like that. Mike.
That's hilarious.
No. It had to be the regular thing. He says, it's easy. You can do it. Uh-huh. I said, really? I said, I'm old. I automatically kind of close things off when someone says it's easy.
Right, right.
Oh, it's easy.
Easy for you, asshole.
You can do that. No, I can't. I can't do that. And it was one of those things where I decided at one point in my life to go the other way, which was the, Nachati Chelek. I want to learn to play like Munir Bashir. Mm-hmm. That's who I want to learn to play like. I want to learn to play like Munir Bashir with no time, no drums, and just the instrument, just the oud. Yeah. I'll do that for a few years. And that was one of those things, and sitting there you know, with the world's greatest French horn player. This guy had played with the L.A. Philharmonic. He was a monster. This guy, and he ended up playing things, and it was just phenomenal. And he came by. He came by and said, "That's okay. That's I know what you're doing." And this guy was really cool.
He helped you through it.
Yeah. He was interested. He's interested in the folk process.
Yeah.
A lot of people, the folk process, and then the sight reading and all that. It's you do have to make a decision.
Yeah. Interesting, man. If you have time, I would love to talk to you just a bit about your duo partnerships with all those great records with Hani Nasser and Wally Ingram later. Those for me, like as I was saying, like I heard the El Rayo acts, and that was a big thing for me. But as I was getting into playing those instruments that you play and like learning those things, I first heard that live Hani Nasser record, and it totally changed my life.
Oh wow!
Can you tell me about just like what made you want to go out on tour with somebody like that, where you found him, and what your intention was with that?
You hear him play, you hear Hani play. He came over to the house one day, and he was playing with Ian Beardsley, who's a flamenco guitarist.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, "This is really good." And I said, "Do you want to go out on the road?" He said, "Oh yeah. Yeah, I want to go out on the road." And so we went out and did gigs, and I said, you'll figure it out. And I showed him a bunch of things. I showed him the New Orleans stuff and the reggae stuff, and he could play it. Yeah. I said, "Oh, that's good." So we went out on the road for a few years.
Was that like 4 or 5 years or something? You did stuff with him?
Yeah, more like 4 years, three or 4 years. We were with Hani, and then I hooked up with Wally Ingram, and that was more like what I kind of intended in the first place, was kind of pots and pans and
right. Yeah, he was hitting all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah, and I said, "Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
Just do that, and then I'll play and you play, and it'll be good."
Was he a guy that you knew from playing around L.A.? That's where he's from, right?
Yeah, he had played with Jackson, and I remember.
Oh, okay.
I remember a live concert where he played with Barbara Kay and Pat McDonald played, and I said, "This guy's really good." He also played with Jackson. He sat in with Jackson, played absolutely appropriate stuff, and he played appropriate stuff with the Timbuk 3. And I said, "You want to go out on the road?" And he said, "Yeah, that'd be good." And so he and I called him one day and said, "You want to go out on the road?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we did.
Right on.
And it worked out real good.
It sure did. Well, those records are so great sounding too. Like, was it always intended for it to just be a live thing? Like, you never did studio records with either of those guys, right?
Yeah, the live recording of me and Hani, that was, I just said, "Well, let's record this." And then I listened to it and I said, "This is a record." Yeah. And then with Wally, it was more a studio thing, and he and I we'd do it live, and then we'd put extra stuff on it.
Oh, right. Okay. That's the Twango Bango record.
Yeah, it was all of that stuff was always recorded live. And it worked out really well. And then we'd overdub stuff. I mean, I would overdub, I do it usually with an electric guitar, with a Dan Electro.
Oh, okay. So over top of the live recording, you overdubbed.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And there was that. And then we would do the whole song. If it was a Weisenborn thing, I'd record Weisenborn, and then he would record drums, and we'd be in the same room, and it worked out really good.
And so in the last few years, I know you've mostly been doing solo stuff. Is that just like another choice that you made where you felt like you were getting your point across better? Or was it like, I know you've had ear problems too. Was it like a volume issue, or where? Yeah,
it was a tinnitus thing where it's a constant ringing in both ears.
Yeah, man. Oh.
And that's what it's really pervasive in the industry. I mean, yep. Jeff Beck and Pete Townsend and yep. Eric Clapton and a whole lot of different people that played really loud at one time. We did all that, and then now we have issues. So it kind of goes with the territory, you know. And I look at it like that. But it's also you go out and you can get your point across better when you do it by yourself. Yeah, you can, you know, and there's no conflicting thing about, you know, keep them dancing and doing all this stuff. Yeah, you don't have to do that. And they sit there. Uh-huh. They like it a lot, but they sit there and they check it out, and I'm playing a little bit differently now too. So,
So are you actively in the middle of touring right now, or are you taking a break, or what's your
No, I took a break for about a year, and I'm about to go out and do a few things and see how it works. And it's kind of testing the waters, and I think it'll work pretty well. So I may fire it up again and go out and do the whole thing. So.
Do you have to adjust like what like your rig and stuff to be just like on a quieter setting overall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Constant adjustment.
Yes.
It's what it is. Yeah. And all the different tunes. I've written some original stuff, and I'm doing all that, and I'm
cool.
I'm right in the middle of a CD, and I've done 7 tunes. I got to do 7 more, and then
what can you tell me about that record?
Oh, well, it's just keeping it biblical. See, I've done 7 tunes, and then do 7 more.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Solo stuff, or is it a band, or what's the?
It's solo. Well, it's both. You know,
okay.
It depends on what the song needs to have, but I'm keeping all the tunes open. You know, maybe 2 of them will be completely just guitar. You know, and then maybe I'll do a Taksim on the oud and one on the bouzouki, and I've taken a bouzouki and put saz frets on it.
Wow.
Yeah, so instead of 3 strings, you have 4 strings.
Right.
And you can
lower, like if there's a lower set.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So it's like 2 instruments on one,
right?
And that's the way I play it. So there's that, and then there's the Weissenborns, and I've got a couple of other instruments here that are, you know, and I may do some guitar stuff. I may just do some of these songs on guitar.
Beautiful. Well, that's exciting. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, I think it'll work out pretty well. I have a couple of guitars that are real good. I got a Saga. It's a copy of Mario Necaferi. Guitar that Django Reinhardt played. You know,
sure,
yeah. There are 2 of them. There's the oval sound hole, and then there's the D-shape sound hole. I have the D-shape sound hole one, and I've been. Checking it out, and that's a Yali Tambor.
Okay.
Which is a banjo.
Amazing.
So it's back to the banjo.
Good. Full circle, man.
Yeah, it works out good. Chumbush, and there's a lot of chumbush on this album. Chumbush is a 12-string fretless banjo.
Right.
And it's tuned like an oud, and you kind of play it like an oud, and it really sounds wonderful. It just sounds great. So
I've seen you play that before. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's a monster.
Right on. Thing. Yeah, man. I could talk to you all day, but I can't thank you enough for taking the time, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's you seem to know what you're talking about, and that's the main thing. Because sometimes I do it in an interview or kind of talk or something like that, and the person doesn't know what they're talking about, but you do.
There's nothing worse than that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you so much for listening, folks and music nerds out there. I hope you enjoyed this month's episode with the mighty David Lindley as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. It was a real treat having him on, and I hope you will be back next month for another chilling episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers. We'll see you then. Thank you for listening, everybody. The Music Makers and Soul Shakers podcast was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee at the Hen House Studio. You can visit us online at www.stevedawson.ca. As always, I would like to thank Jeremy Holmes in Vancouver, BC for his help with research, and we'll see you next month for another gripping episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers.